This is the PowerPoint for the circulatory system. You start by going to the first slide entitled Arteries, Veins, and Capillaries. See that we're going to talk about the arteries first. Arteries carry blood away. So artery starts with A, away starts with A also. Carry blood away from the heart. They're said to branch, diverge, or fork as they form smaller and smaller divisions. So they start off large. You can kind of see how the red artery there on the left is branching off into smaller and smaller sections. Veins, by contrast, that's on the right there in blue, veins by contrast carry blood toward the heart and so are said to join, merge, and converge into the successively larger vessels approaching the heart. So again, veins carry blood towards the heart. So if you notice, right in the middle there, with all the capillaries, you got a bunch of tiny little capillaries. They are connecting together to form the vein on the right, and that is going to carry blood back towards the heart. So we have artery away from the heart and veins towards the heart. Now, those little things in the middle, capillaries, those are the smallest blood vessels. All right, so the three blood vessels we're talking about right now, the arteries, veins, and capillaries. The capillaries are the smallest, and those are responsible for delivering nutrients from the blood to other tissues like organs, muscles, and skin. So again, you have arteries that bring blood away from the heart, branch off into the capillaries. Capillaries deliver the nutrients from the blood to other parts of the body. And then you have capillaries taking that blood away from the rest of the body and forming back towards the veins and headed back towards the heart so that they can get the nutrients and start all over again. If the arteries and veins are considered the highways and roads of the body, so think of it this way, like in the city. So again, if the arteries and veins would be considered the highways and roads of the body, the capillaries are the back alleys and driveways that provide direct access to nearly every cell in the body. Okay, click to the next slide. And you'll see that we are going to talk about blood flow. Blood flow is the volume of blood flowing through a vessel, an organ, or the entire circulation in a given period. In resting conditions, blood flow is relatively constant or steady. So by resting conditions, I mean you sitting in a chair, sitting on a couch, you at rest, okay, sitting still. However, at any moment, blood flow through individual body organs may vary widely and is intimately related to their immediate needs. Okay, so blood flow can change in your body depending upon what parts of the body need more blood. For example, when you eat food, the blood flow is increased to your stomach and the digestive system in order to convert the food that we eat into energy. Your stomach needs that energy to digest the food, so it needs more blood for that. Another example would be exercise. When we exercise, your muscles are needed to perform work and therefore need a greater amount of energy to make them work. Blood flow is increased to the muscles at work in order to provide nutrients and energy to those muscles being used. Okay, next slide. Blood pressure. This is something that you'll notice happens when you go to the doctor's office. They'll put that cuff on your arm, just like it's shown in that slide there. But you need to know that blood pressure is the force per unit area exerted on a vessel wall by the contained blood. So your blood internally inside of your blood vessels, so your veins, arteries, capillaries, that contains a certain amount of pressure. And we are measuring the area exerted on that vessel wall. Okay. When we measure your blood pressure, we mean that we are measuring the pressure of the blood in the largest arteries near the heart. Remember, arteries carry blood away from the heart. So we're measuring the largest arteries near the heart. You have a large artery moving through your upper arm, and therefore that is one of the best places to take your blood pressure reading. And this is what is being measured when you go to the doctor and they put that cuff on your arm. It inflates, makes it really tight around your arm, and it has a squeezing kind of effect. It is the pressure gradient, or the difference in blood pressure within the vascular system, that provides the driving force that keeps blood moving. Okay, by pressure gradient, I mean the difference in blood pressure. Okay, that is physics. It always moves from an area of higher pressure to an area of lower pressure. Same thing happens inside of your body. All right. That change in pressure not only applies to our bodies, but to the laws of nature as well. Okay. So isn't science great? Remember, pressure gradient, that's the difference in blood pressure. So high blood pressure to low blood pressure. There's a gap there. All right. And that provides the driving force that keeps the blood moving throughout your body. Constant changing from high to low. Okay, next slide. Next thing we need to know about blood is resistance. Okay, resistance is the opposition to flow and is a measure of the amount of friction blood encounters as it passes through the vessels. All right, so resistance, it says that it's the opposition, or like it says, resistance to flow, making it more difficult to flow through the body by the amount of friction that blood encounters. So friction slows down the blood. That would add resistance. Okay, the further from the heart, the greater the resistance will be. This makes sense because the blood closest to the heart will be the blood that is most impacted by the muscular contraction of the heart itself. Okay, so just think, you have miles of blood vessels within your body, and blood needs to be moved, and your heart is what's causing it to move. So the greater resistance will be furthest away from the heart, because that is harder for your heart to pump blood there. All right. There are three things that influence the resistance within blood vessels. The first thing is blood viscosity. This is the internal resistance to flow that exists in all fluids. So this is not just blood. This happens to any fluid that we could talk about. And this is related to the thickness or stickiness of a fluid. Think about how ketchup flows out of a bottle. This would be considered to have a high viscosity or thickness, while pouring water out of a bottle would have low viscosity or thickness. All right, notice how the ketchup would move very slowly while the water moved very quickly. They're both considered liquids, but ketchup, that has a higher viscosity. Okay, so again, the ketchup slowly coming out of the bottle, that's because it is thick and it is sluggish or slow moving. The water flowing out of the bottle, that's quick and easy. All right, back to the blood. The greater the viscosity, so the more similar to ketchup it is, the less easily molecules slide past one another. Again, because it's thicker, so it's harder for molecules to move in such a thick liquid. All right, and that means it's more difficult to get and keep the fluid moving. Okay, so your heart has to work harder. Because it contains formed elements and plasma proteins, blood is much more viscous than water. Hence, it flows more slowly under the same conditions. So our blood isn't like ketchup. Our blood's not like water. It's a little bit thicker than water, but still it has a viscosity to it. Like I said, thickness or stickiness. So we talked about three things that influence the resistance of the blood vessels themselves. Blood vessels talking about the arteries, veins, capillaries. First thing is blood viscosity. The second is the total blood vessel length. You have very long blood vessels, all right? The relationship between total blood vessel length and resistance is pretty straightforward. The longer the vessel, the greater the resistance. An extra pound or two of fat requires that miles of small vessels be added to service it. This significantly increases the peripheral circulation resistance. Peripheral, remember we talked about if you have good peripheral vision, that's kind of outside vision. When we talk about peripheral, that means talking about your arms, legs, hands, things like that. All right. Another reason why, and this would be another reason why excess body fat is unhealthy, okay, and requires your heart to work harder than it would otherwise. So one more time, the longer the vessel, the greater the resistance. Your heart has to work harder to get blood there. Okay? So again, 3 things that influence resistance of blood vessels. First thing is blood viscosity. Second is total blood vessel length. And the third is the blood vessel diameter. Because blood viscosity and vessel length are normally unchanging, okay, so normally they stay the same, the influence of these factors can be considered constant in healthy people. Okay, so constant stays the same in healthy people. Changes in blood vessel diameter are frequent, however, and significantly alter peripheral resistance. Again, we talked about peripheral resistance, the resistance of the blood vessels in the arms, legs, hands. So how is this, you might ask? Okay, how can this change? Well, the laws of physics tell us that the smaller a tube for liquid to pass through, the greater the friction and the higher the pressure. So think about it. If a tube is really tiny, it needs a lot of pressure to get through there. All right? So again, those laws of physics tell us that the smaller a tube for liquid to pass through, the greater the friction and the higher the pressure. The greater the friction, higher the pressure, because relatively more of the fluid contacts the tube wall, where its movement is impeded. So you have more friction where that liquid is in contact with that wall, the wall of the tube or the blood vessel. All right. The same goes for the diameter of your blood vessels. In someone who is overweight or unhealthy, fats can obstruct the flow of blood throughout your vessels, decreasing the diameter of the vessel or the size or width of the vessel, increasing the friction. Okay, so it's making it harder, so it's slowing down the blood, increasing the pressure, making it harder for the blood to pass through, and therefore increasing the resistance, making it harder for your heart and body to work optimally. So again, another reason why we need to be aware of exercise and about the amount of weight that is on our body. Okay, so I said we talked about 3 influences on resistance. You should be able to know those 3. The first one is blood viscosity. The second, blood vessel length. The third, blood vessel diameter. Okay, go on to the next slide entitled the heart. In order to understand the flow of blood through the heart, okay, so we've been talking about blood this whole time. Now we're going to understand how the blood flows through our body. And in order to understand that, we must first understand the anatomy of the heart, because the heart is the muscle that causes the blood to be pumped throughout the entire body. So when looking at this image of the heart, you have to understand that it is as if we're looking at someone else's heart standing in front of us. Okay, so if you are looking at a friend standing in front of you, you're looking at their heart. Your left hand is on their right side. Your right hand is on their left side. So it's flipped. Okay, so therefore the left side of the heart is on the right, and the right side of the heart that we're looking at is on the left. That's why you see in this image the left ventricle in red, okay, there at the bottom of the heart on the right side of the image. That's why this is flipped. So looking at the image, you'll see everything labeled right is on the left side of our image. Everything labeled left is on the right side of our image. So it's backwards, okay? So the first thing you need to know about your heart is that it is a muscle. And within that muscle, there are 4 chambers inside of it. These chambers contract and relax. So they pump, they squeeze and they relax. Squeeze and relax. So squeeze or contract and relax. Contract, relax. They fill and empty with blood in order to keep your blood circulating. Okay, so blood is filled up into a chamber. It is squeezed out of one chamber, put into another chamber, and then pushed to your body. All right. Take a moment to locate those chambers now. You'll see right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, and left ventricle. Okay, locate those right now. Okay, looking at the left side of the image, or consider the right side of the heart, you'll see the right atrium and the right ventricle. In between the right atrium and the left ventricle, in between the right atrium and right ventricle is the tricuspid valve. This valve opens and closes to allow blood from the right atrium into the right ventricle. The same occurs on the left side of the heart. This is the right side of the image, looking at it colored in red there. But this valve is called the mitral or bicuspid valve. All right, we got tricuspid and bicuspid, tri meaning 3, and cuspid, that basically means flaps, and bicuspid 2, again, flaps. So the tricuspid valve has 3 little flaps that allow blood to move through it, and the bicuspid or mitral has 2 flaps that allow the blood to move through it. Okay. Fun fact is that the sound that the valves make when closing is the sound that you hear, known as your heartbeat. Okay. Next, we'll talk about the 4 veins involved in your heart. You can get all this information looking at this image, so bear with me here. Remember that veins bring blood toward the heart. Remember, towards the heart, towards the heart. Okay, locate the right atrium now. Above and below the right atrium, you'll see the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. We talked about superior meaning above, inferior meaning below. These 2 veins bring blood from your body into your heart. Next, locate your left atrium. You'll see arrows pointing towards the words left atrium. That's how you know you're looking at the left atrium there. Okay, those openings where the arrows are coming out of, inside of your left atrium, are from your left pulmonary veins and your right pulmonary veins. Okay, so we have the 4 veins. We have the superior and inferior vena cava bringing blood towards the heart through your veins into your right atrium. Then we have your pulmonary veins, your left pulmonary veins and right pulmonary veins, bringing blood from your lungs back towards your heart. Okay? Pulmonary means lungs, so whenever you hear pulmonary, think lungs. Next, we'll find the arteries. So we got the 4 veins. Next, we're finding the arteries involved. Okay? Again, arteries carry blood away from your heart and to the rest of your body. Arteries away from the heart to the rest of your body. Locate the aorta found at the top of the image. So that's the top one with you got 3 tubes kind of sticking out with 3 arrows pointing upwards. That is your aorta right there. This artery is very large and provides your entire body with blood from your heart. Okay, so we got the aorta, big artery, aorta, artery. We got 2 more A's there. All right. Next, locate the pulmonary arteries just below the aorta there in blue. So directly below the aorta, you'll see your pulmonary artery. You have a left pulmonary artery and a right pulmonary artery, which carry blood away from your heart and into your lungs. So we have the aorta carrying blood away from your heart to your body. We have the superior and inferior vena cava, which are veins that bring blood from your body towards your heart into your right atrium. We have the pulmonary artery, arteries headed towards your lungs. You have left and right because you have 2 lungs, left and right lung, carrying blood away from your heart into the lungs. And then you have your pulmonary veins, which bring blood back to the heart into your left atrium right there. Okay, click to the next slide. And this slide is entitled Systemic Circuit, otherwise known as the peripheral circulation. So this is your entire body that we'll be talking about, not just your lungs. So you have the pulmonary circuit, which is your lungs, because we talked about that with the pulmonary veins and pulmonary arteries, and then the systemic circuit, which is the rest of your body there. Okay. All right. So any fluid driven by a pump through a circuit of closed channels operates under pressure. We talked about that when we talked about blood pressure a few slides ago. Okay. And the nearer the fluid is to the pump, in this case the pump is the heart, the greater the pressure exerted on the fluid. So the closer it is towards the heart, the greater the pressure. Okay? The dynamics of blood flow in blood vessels is no exception. The blood flows through the blood vessels along a pressure gradient. Remember, this means it flows from an area of higher pressure to an area of lower pressure. Fundamentally, the pumping action of the heart generates blood flow. Okay, it's kind of tied back into what we just talked about in previous slides. Pressure results when flow is opposed by resistance. So, how does the blood flow through the heart? All right, like I said before, we have two systems at work. But first we're going to talk about the systemic circuit. Again, also known as the peripheral circuit. All right. The systemic circuit provides oxygen-rich blood to your entire body. Okay, you inhale air. All right, inside the air is oxygen. Your body needs oxygen to survive. So when I say oxygen-rich blood, it means that your blood is full of oxygen, ready for your body to use. So the oxygen-rich blood enters the heart through the left atrium, passes through the mitral or the bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle. So right now we're just talking about the left side of the heart. If you go back to the image before, or stick with this one here, it's on the right side of the heart. It's in red there. So right side of the image that we're looking at, left side of the heart, right side of this image. Okay. So again, that enters through the left atrium, passes through the mitral or the bicuspid. It has two flaps, bicuspid valve, into the left ventricle. Then your left ventricle contracts, squeezes, pushes the blood out of the aorta away from the heart. So again, that was one of the arteries that we talked about, the aorta, located at the top of the heart. And your blood goes to the rest of your body. The oxygen is then delivered to all parts of your body through the arteries. Okay, so we go from your heart to your aorta to other arteries throughout your entire body, gets broken down into capillaries and delivered to the rest of your body. Okay. So again, the oxygen is then delivered to your body parts through the capillaries, through the arteries, and then the oxygen poor blood. Okay, so the blood delivered to your body parts, your body takes that oxygen, uses it, all right, uses it as energy, and now your blood doesn't have any more oxygen. Your blood is still there, but it just doesn't have oxygen anymore. So your oxygen poor blood returns through the veins back to your heart or towards your heart. So we go from left atrium to the left ventricle through the aorta to other arteries, broken down into capillaries, into your body. Your body uses that oxygen. Your blood continues through other capillaries, back into veins, and back up towards your heart again. Once the oxygen poor blood or oxygen deficient, okay, this blood no longer has oxygen, all right, once that returns to the heart, we begin to enter the second system of blood flow called the pulmonary circuit. Okay, click to the next slide. Oxygen poor blood enters the right atrium through the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Okay, so those are two of the veins that we talked about. You have oxygen poor blood coming back from the heart, back from the body towards the heart, fills your right atrium with blood, comes in through the superior and inferior vena cava. In this image, you see they have been labeled the plural version, but know that the superior vena cava is the uppermost vein and the inferior vena cava is the lowermost vein of the two veins entering the right atrium. So that is, the right atrium is in the upper left corner of the heart in this image, but again, it's the right atrium on somebody else's body. Take a moment to find the vena cava here, real quick. The oxygen poor blood collects inside of the right atrium and then gets pumped from the right atrium. Okay, so your right atrium fills up with that blood, oxygen poor blood, and then that contracts, pushes the blood through the tricuspid valve. It has three flaps, a three-flap valve there, and into the right ventricle. That's at the bottom of the heart there. It is here in the right ventricle that the oxygen-poor blood is then pumped out of the heart through the right pulmonary artery. So again, we have blood leaving your heart now. So an artery takes it away from the heart. So we have your right pulmonary artery going towards your right lung and your left pulmonary artery going towards your left lung. Remember, pulmonary means lungs. Okay. The image here shows only one pulmonary artery, but it is labeled the plural version so that you understand there is more than one pulmonary artery. You got a left and a right. The left pulmonary artery leads the oxygen-poor blood to the left lung, and again, the right pulmonary artery leads the oxygen-poor blood to the right lung. Okay, it is inside the lungs through respiration, of course, that carbon dioxide is released and exchanged for oxygen to be carried back to the heart through the pulmonary veins. Okay, remember, veins bring blood towards the heart, and your lungs collect the oxygen needed for your body, throw it into the blood. And again, the pulmonary veins bring the blood back towards the heart. And the process starts all over again, delivering oxygen-rich blood to your body. Okay? So this starts over again inside of the right atrium. Okay? This happens over and over, left atrium. And this happens over and over again. Left atrium, left ventricle, aorta, body. Okay? Then it comes from your body uses it. Then body goes back to your right atrium goes down to right ventricle gets pumped, okay, through the pulmonary veins into your lungs. Lungs get rid of carbon dioxide, bring in the oxygen. Then again through your heart, still pumping blood. The blood is then pumped from your lungs, full of oxygen, back into your left atrium. Okay, this is on a continuous cycle, over and over again. Okay, click to the final slide for reference. I mentioned that you needed to know the 4 chambers, 2 valves, 4 veins, and 3 arteries. Okay, summarizing all that we've talked about, the 4 chambers are the right atrium, the left atrium, the right ventricle, and left ventricle. An easy way to remember where the ventricle are in terms of the heart. If you look at the bottom of the heart, it's almost it is a pointy kind of shape, so it's a V shape. Ventricle starts with the V ventricle. Okay. The 2 valves are the tricuspid valve and the mitral or bicuspid valve. The 4 veins you need to know are the right pulmonary vein, the left pulmonary vein, the superior vena cava, and the inferior vena cava. And the 3 arteries you need to know are the left pulmonary artery, the right pulmonary artery, and the largest of all, the aorta.